Welcome to the show. My name is Brock Page, and we have ourselves a juicy NBA Wednesday night. Good slate of games. So let's go ahead and start in the Queen City. Queen City. Dallas at Charlotte. Charlotte opened 6, bet up to 7. Total open 210.5, bet down to 209 and a hook. 67% of the handle, still leaning towards Charlotte. Look for them to close out anywhere between 6.5 and 7 if that trend continues. And speaking of the trends, we got ourselves a Dallas team who's been right down the middle when it comes to taking care of the number 2-2 ATS last 4. 50% covering overall, 55% covering on the road. They've been really good in a few spots though. 5-2 ATS in their last 7, 63% covering as the road underdog, and a staggering 81% covering in games at the current point spread. But before you go refinancing the mortgage on Mark Cuban's boys, just keep in mind they failed to successfully cover the number in their last 2 straight. The Mavs are also covering just 42% in the second game of a back-to-back, and just 25% versus teams under 500, really played down to the level of their competition. And they're also going up against a Charlotte squad who's 3-1 ATS last 4, 4-2 ass to mouth in their last 6, and covering 64% of their games as the official home favorite. But if it sounds too good to be true for Charlotte backers, oh yes, it most definitely is. The Hornets are just 16-22 against the spread overall, 13-19 covering after a day off, and just 44% covering versus teams allowing more than 102 a game. Now, scoring-wise, we've seen a good amount of unders in these Charlotte games, 3-1 to the under last 4 most recently. But we've actually seen the exact opposite on the other side of the floor. Dallas games went 3-1 to the over in their last 4 themselves. No play on the total here for me. And as a matter of fact, there are way too many trouble areas for me to risk my hard-earned, very lucrative, abundant 1% style dollars. I do like the Mavs and a bit of a tease. Why don't I buy it up 10 points and pay a lot of juice for a 3-teamer? How about that? All told, I'm going to forego a play on the traditional lines, but I'll be more than happy to take Dallas plus 17 as the first pick in my 3-teamer. All right, next game, Miami, Indiana. Pacers open 5, down to 4.5. Totals at an even 207. Pacers are 2-0 against the spread in their last couple of games, 67% as the official home favorite. The Pacers are also 2-0 covering against the Heat, and are also covering a ridiculous 78% of their games that tipped off at the current point spread. They're facing a Miami squad who's failed to cover their last 2 straight and are just 2-3 ATS in their last 5. This Miami squad's also failed to cover 4 of 5 in the second game of a back-to-back. Heat games are seeing a lot of scoring as of late, though, 4-0 to the over in their last 4. Meanwhile, though, little bit different story on the other side as Pacer games went just 1-3 to the over in their last 4 themselves. No play on the total here for me. And as a matter of fact, I'm fading a play on everything in this game despite making a really good case for Indiana. And to be honest, I'd really like Indiana in this spot here if Miami hadn't won their last 4 straight in 7 of their last 9. That factor right there tells me that Miami's hot in the outright game, let alone catching a few buckets. So like I said, I'm going to fade a play on everything in this matchup. But as always, if you feel you have a beat on this game, please do tell and share with all of us in the comment section below. All right, next game, Utah at the nation's capital. Washington open 7.5, down to 7. Total open 204.5, up to 205 flat. And at the moment, the Wizards are 280 to win it. But despite being the clear-cut favorites to win this one outright, this Washington squad has struggled against the number in several categories. The Wizards against the spread are just 1-3 last 4, 8-18 as the favorite, and a pitiful 5-14 against sub-500 teams. They're facing a Utah squad who's been staying relatively afloat when it comes to covering the number, 20-20 ATS overall, 2-2 ATS last 4, and they're actually 1-0 covering in their one head-to-head matchup with the Wiz. So with all that in mind, it looks like the Utah Jazz might just be the lesser of two evils in this spot here. Now, scoring-wise, good amount of unders in these Utah games. 3-1 to the under last 4, 7-2 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, on the other side, same song and dance for these Washington games, as their contest went 2-0 to the under in their last 2, 4-2 to the under in their last 6. So with those trends in mind, you'd think I'd be racing to my bookie to make an easy underplay, but I'm not. We're seeing a good amount of over money coming in on the handle. Typically, when the public disagrees with the trends and where I'm leaning, it's typically for good reason, and they're normally right. So when it comes to the total, the over-under in this one, I'm going to forego a play on it. And unfortunately for you degens looking to strike it rich off of free YouTube pick videos, I got nothing for you on this game either. Although Washington's pretty bad against the number, this Utah team's covered just 7 of 20 on the road and just 2 of 8 games that tipped off at the current spread. Sorry guys, can't do it. No action for me. But as always, if you got a winner in this one, Smarty Pants, please feel free to do us all a solid and share with us in the comments section below. I'd really appreciate it there, Slugger. All right, next game. Detroit, Brooklyn. The Pistons open 1.5, now up to 2.5. Total open at 209. All the way down to 204 flat. Big move on the under there. Currently, the Pistons are $1.30 on the money line. And at the moment, 56% of the handles leaning toward Detroit. But despite where the public's shaded at the moment, this Pistons squad hasn't been real good as of late. They dropped 3 of their last 4 and covered just 4 of their last 10. Detroit's also struggled to cover against teams with losing records as well. They're covering just 22% of their games versus sub-500 teams. They're going up against a Brooklyn squad who's 4-0 ATS last 4, 8-2 ass to mouth last 10, and 8-3 covering as the official home underdog. Both teams are 3-2 to the under in their last 5, but both teams are also coming off games that decisively went over the posted total as well. So with that in mind, no play on the total here for me, but when it comes to picking sides, a lean toward the Nets seems certainly logical if you're a trends guy. As for me, I'm a bit of a scared trends guy, a scaredy cat, a little bitch boy. Wait, that's too far. But I just don't think 2.5 points is enough for me in the spot here. So what I'll do once again is pay a lot of juice on a teaser play, buy it up 10 points, and take the Brooklyn Nets plus 12.5, getting the job done in a very expensive 3-teamer. All right, next game, Orlando at Milwaukee. The Bucks open 9.5, bet up to 10.5. Totals at 216 and a hook. Orlando's just 1-3 ATS last 4, 2-7 covering in their last 9. Orlando also proceeds to be amongst the worst covering teams in the league. 36% overall, 35% as the road dog, 28% in the second game of a back-to-back. They got themselves a Milwaukee team who's 3-2 ATS last 5, 5-2 ATS last 7. The Bucks have also won 4 of their last 7 games outright. Now, scoring-wise, both teams are 2-2 to the over last 4. No play on a total here for me. And when it comes to selecting sides, it seems like a play on the Bucks, despite the double digits, is still a very sensible play. But the Bucks haven't played a game yet this season at that current number, and they failed to cover the number in 12 of their 20 games at home this year. So once again, both teams for me have just too many red flags. I think we can pick better spots here. If there's something I'm missing in this one, please give me a shout and enlighten me in the comment section below. I know there's a lot of smart guys out there watching this video now, including you. Until then, I'll be taking no action on this game. All right, next game, OKC at Minnesota. Actually really looking forward to this one. Minnesota opened 3, bet up to 4.5. Total open 210.5, bet up to 211 flat. And not only is this Minnesota squad taking money, they're also taking 68% of the handle. Look for OKC to catch another half a point or so real soon in this one. And if you're leaning toward OKC catching a few on the road, you might not be in too bad of a spot here. OKC's covered 2 of their last 3, 5 of their last 8, and 3 of their last 3 as the official Vegas underdog. OKC's also 2-0 covering as the official road underdog, and 1-0 covering in their lone game at the current point spread. But before you go ahead sprinting to the counter, pulling a hammy or an ass cheek, and unathletically tumbling to the gaming floor, just let me remind you that this Oklahoma City squad has failed to successfully cover the spread in their 3 prior head-to-head matchups with Minnesota. OKC against the spread is also just 15-26 overall, 7-13 on the road, 5-7 versus teams over 500. They're facing a Minnesota squad who's 2-0 against the number in their last couple of games, and they're coming off a 28-point drubbing of the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's about where the good news ends for Minnesota backers, though. Yeah, the T-Wolves against the number are just 8-13 in the friendly confines, 6-13 as the home favorite, and just 5-8 in their games that tipped off at the current number. Now, total-wise, let's slide into some scoring action. Minnesota games are 3-1 to the under in their last 4, but on the other side, OKC games went 3-1 to the over on their side of things themselves. So with that in mind, another pass for me on the total. And when it comes to the spread and a money line winner, I'll be honest with you, I'm not real interested in this number. I was rather impressed with OKC's trends as the underdog, and really that's kind of always been their mentality going into things. You know, the underdog mentality, everybody's against us, or the victim mentality, depending on how you look at it. But I do like OKC to cover about 14.5 points. I know a way that I can do that, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move the number and take OKC plus 14.5 as the third and final pick of my 3-team 10-point super teaser. What I'm also going to do is slide into my next game, and I'm talking about New Orleans -1 at Memphis. Total move upward to an even 210. Currently, the Pelicans are $1.16 to win it. And at the moment, 66% of the public is shaded toward the Pelicans. Now, New Orleans backers must have short memories. They're just 1-4 last 5, 0-1 covering against Memphis. They're also going up against a Grizzlies team who's 3-1 ATS last 4 and 5-2 covering in their last 7. Memphis games have also gone 3-1 to the over last 4 and gave up 113 on average in those matchups. Meanwhile, on the other side, scoring-wise, a little bit different story as New Orleans games went just 1-3 to the overs themselves. They averaged just about 115 points per contest in those games as well. So all that in mind, another no play on the total here for me. But when it comes to selecting sides, I think I can actually commit to a winner in this one. Despite the Pelicans' recent woes, they're covering a solid 60% on the road, 80% at the current number, and 89% as the official road favorite. Needless to say, the Pelicans travel well. No more needs to be said. I'm going to forego a play on the total and the money line. I do like the New Orleans Pelicans -1 getting the job done against the number. All right, I'm going to slide to my next and final game for the show. It is going to be Atlanta at Denver. Denver opened 10, bet down to 9.5. Total open 215, bet up to 215.5. Currently, the Nuggies are 450 to win it. And at the moment, 56% is shaded toward Denver. The Nuggets are 3-1 ATS last 4, 11-3 ass to mouth in their last 14. Denver's also covering 61% at the Pepsi Center and 63% as the official home favorite. But before you go ahead refinancing, just keep in mind that this Denver squad is covering just 44% against sub-500 teams and just 25% in games at the current number. They're going up against an Atlanta squad who's 3-2 covering last 5, 12-5 covering in their last 17. Now, scoring-wise, both teams went 2-2 to the over in their last 4. Some get over the total, some stay under. Little this, little that when it comes to the line. So no action on the total in this one for me. And when it comes to the number, both teams have some really good pros and some fairly concerning cons. So although this could be a potential double-digit catch for Atlanta, they're right in the heart of a brutal stretch of road games, and they lost their last 4 outright. Tough to back a team with that kind of bad juju. So all told, I'm just going to stay away from this game and take a free pass. But once again, as always, if there's something you know that I don't, you are more than welcome to show one and show all. in the comment section below. That's a poker reference, by the way. All right, folks, that is going to do it for me. But before I get out of here, I have to remind you that I am not a sports betting expert, nor do I implore you to take any of my picks. A wise man once said, good ain't free, and free ain't good. For some reason, you decide to use the free information on this program. I don't know why, but you're using it at your own discretion. Most importantly, if you're betting any of these games, do it safe, do it responsibly, and most important, have fun. For Brock Page Productions, I'm Brock Page. And have yourself a positive day.